All right, all right. Hey, everybody. We're here. It's Women's Wednesday. We're here with Dana. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Did you know what the set looked like ahead of time?
I did because I just joined your page. So I started following a little.
So the outfit?
Oh, no, that was just because I have to go to work after this.
You like match perfectly.
Perfect.
Like you were meant to be here. Perfect. We had one other person that came and he literally was in like, he wasn't in graffiti, but he was in patterns. We're like, what the heck? Like if he stood against the wall,
you wouldn't see him.
You wouldn't have seen him because he would have just like blended completely in. But anyways, thanks for being here. It's so good to have you. I love having women on. It's interesting because it's hard to get women to come on the show, you know, and more women need to be recovering out loud and whatever that looks like to them, if they're comfortable doing so. But just, you know, lifting each other up, encouraging each other, being there for each other, you know, like women can get very competitive and, you know, all those things that go along with it. And I just love to be able to have like honest, open conversations with women and be able to, you know, touch people out there that might be watching. So
it's really interesting. When I first got sober, I was like always looking for signs from God. And for some reason, that song Kesha, Praying.
I love that song.
Like hit me so hard. And instead of it being about a person, it was about heroin. And I like when she's like, when I'm finished, they won't even know your name. So like right before I pulled in here, I put it on. Just it's like it was such an empowering. Like my sponsees, I drive around. I'm like, imagine you're singing this to your drug of choice. Like
I'm gonna listen to that when I leave. I love that song.
Yeah,
and the video. I think it's shot at Slab City.
I didn't know. I've seen the video.
Have you been to Slab City? Have you, Alfred? Have you been to Slab City? Emily? Probably. Emily's only 21. But Slab City's like this area in like way out past the desert where it's like martial law. Like people that have either given up on life or just want to like have their own little society. They go out there and just look it up.
I will.
Slab City. It's crazy. Like everybody needs to go to Slab City once in their life. Just like drive through it. And everything's done on trade. So you like bring stuff there with you and you like trade with people. People just make their own encampments. It's like a homeless encampment, Beverly Hills style in the desert. Like you don't pay taxes. You don't buy the land. Like it's all just, it's a
free for all.
But like there's this cool area and it's in a lot of movies. And when you watch that video, there's those like big rocks and stuff that shoot on. They're all colorful. That's Slab City.
Oh, wow.
It's like the main attraction when you enter Slab City. So anyways, got a little off topic there, but so you're in recovery.
Yeah.
How long do you have sober?
5.5 years.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And was this the first time you tried to get sober or, I mean, let's not say tried, but is this your longest period of being sober?
Yeah. I was sober one other time for 4 months. I tried a million times. Like I was like that rehab person, you know, but I had worked the steps, got into the program, got 4 months, got a job in Beverly Hills at a hair salon. I was like doing my sober thing. And like one day I was driving and I was like, oh, that is so circumstantial that I ended up on heroin. I don't think I need AA because I'm smarter than that.
Of course.
I would never, ever use a needle. Like it felt so bizarre to me. It was like waking up from a dream. And so you know how that goes. I stopped going to meetings. And then like that Friday night, I think it was on my 4 months exactly, me and my buddy went and relapsed. And I remember I was supposed to meet my sponsor the next day and do the 4th step. And I like did math and wrote my 4th step. Very thorough.
Oh, yeah.
It was like really long. But I never made it to his house. I went to, I don't remember what the hell happened next. I was like in Griffith Park under a bridge. Like, you know how that goes.
So were you homeless for a while or?
I wasn't like homeless like that. I did that hotel homeless. You know what I mean? I sold a lot of drugs to pay for my habit.
Got it.
So I would stay, but I mean, I stayed in my car. Like if it got too late at night, I would just be like, why would I go to a hotel now? I'll just sleep in my car for a little bit and, you know, start this again tomorrow.
When did you start using drugs?
Well, I'll go back to, I grew up back east in New Jersey and New York, and my dad came back from Vietnam on heroin. And my mom was just kind of like, she had us young and she moved us to the country in New Jersey. And then she and my dad like divorced. And my dad he's a colorful person. He's sober now for years and years. But he worked, for like the mob a little when I was younger. So I saw a lot of crazy in New York City, but then I would go home to the country with my mom. And my mom is like the most spiritual person you'll probably ever meet. Like she guides people in spirituality. She travels all over the world.
Really?
Budapest. She's like gone to India and sat with the monks for 6 weeks where you like don't talk and you do these blessings. And so if you like crash the two of them together, it's like a perfect me. You know what I mean? Like I'm not as spiritual as her and I'm not as crazy as him. So I grew up like that. And so when I was in high school, my dad had already gotten sober and they were just super worried. I was smoking a lot of weed. I went to rehab for the first time back then. I'd only done weed, but then I had to go to that aftercare program. I met all the bad kids.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like you hear that story, right? Like I learned about drugs in treatment.
Yeah. So then I didn't I always joke and I'm like, I was like Nike, like just do it. Like I never had this doesn't seem like a good idea, Dana. Don't do this. Like I just didn't have that button.
There wasn't that rational thought at all. Was it like, did you have that thought in other areas of your life or you were just kind of like,
I've just always been just on like full throttle, whatever I'm involved in, I'm 110%, good or bad. So I just took off and the thing is where I grew up in the country, a lot of those kids weren't going into New York City. So they were like scared of New York City, but I wasn't. And neither were the kids that I just met that were doing worse things. So we started doing coke and buying coke and selling it at the high schools by my area. Like we could take orders on like a Friday. So that began that. I remember like back then it was just so crazy. I think of it now because I have kids that age. Like if I would imagine my kids going into like Spanish Harlem in these buildings that are like locking doors behind you with like automatic guns and like.
This was the high school?
Yeah, no, this was where I was buying drugs in New York.
I'm like, what?
No.
Like,
no, I went to like Catholic high school. And like just doing lines of coke so they didn't think I was a cop, which I was fine. I was like, just do it. Sure. Free drugs. All right. Are you sure? So I did that. But like I always knew in my mind I didn't want to be that. Like from a very, very, very young age, like my whole life, I can remember I just wanted to be a mom. Like I loved babies. I love kids. I could jive with them. Yeah. Even now, like I just like they're so innocent. They're so awesome. If you see the world through their eyes, you just don't have a worry. Like they're so joyful. And so I smoked crack once. I remember for like 2 months straight. Like I tried it once and it just went on.
Like how did that start?
Well, I was just with somebody that was like, oh, instead of snorting it, let's smoke it.
Okay, and you're like, just do it.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just do it. And then I met like this older boyfriend who didn't really think that was cool, and so then like I stopped doing it. I was at that, I feel like at that age, you're so like impressionable with the person you're with. Like you're just like forever going to be with this person and you'll do anything, it's a different thing.
Yeah.
And so I stopped doing it and my friends didn't, and they started getting into heroin. And I had tried heroin like once or twice back then and threw up the whole day and thought this is such a waste. I missed the whole day. I missed the party.
Yeah.
But I was also like the worst to do coke with because I just never wanted to run out. So as soon as we started to run out and I figured we couldn't get any more, then I'm like crying. I'm the one who was like, oh, what am I doing? Don't fall asleep on me. They're we won't. And then like everybody's sleeping and I'm awake. So I ended up moving to California with a bunch of my friends that weren't into that. And actually I moved down to Bay Street in Costa Mesa. It was my first apartment.
Oh, okay. Right by here.
Yeah. And then I moved down to the peninsula and I met my husband. He was my next door neighbor and that was fun. Like that was still the fun partying. We would do ecstasy, go to Vegas, go to Club Rubber,
right? I remember
go to Dennis Rodman's house. You know what I mean? Like I was just a full on party, but fun party, And then, I had my kids and we got married and bought a house and had, these beautiful kids. And
And were you working at this time?
I was in hair school.
Okay.
I went to Paul Mitchell.
Okay.
And then I never worked prior to getting sober to pay for my bills, but I worked because I was really passionate about hair. Mm-hmm. And I should say like that throughout my entire life, I've always felt something missing within myself. I was raised Catholic. I tried Buddhism. I tried all these things. Like I knew there was something out there. I just could not connect for the life of me. At all. I remember I'd be up on coke and then I'd be like chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. That's what the Buddhists chant.
Yeah. I do the same.
Yeah.
I actually chant that. So
Oh yeah. And so I'd be like, just like super like, just, take something from me. But I couldn't tap into that. And so I just surrounded myself with people that I expected to make me happy because I was so miserable inside. And then like, they would jump through hoops to try to like do anything, like just make me happy and when it didn't happen, like I was so mad at them, but really deep inside, like I hated myself. And so, I put my ex-husband through so much, like poor guy.
Was he a normie or, I mean, like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's a normie. He's got a business. He's a great dad. Thank God. I ended up just on pain pills, right? Because I hurt my back when my daughter was little. And that was like, we drank with people who drank alcoholically, and it just alcohol was never really like the answer for me. I hate waking up hungover.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with myself. I'm like, now what? I'm depressed. I feel like shit, and there's nothing to make it go away. And like, I just couldn't keep drinking. I've done it before, but it wasn't my thing. So when I hurt my back, my daughter was little. I think I had postpartum too at the time because I was like super depressed on top of it. And then I got opiates in my system, and it was like, that was it.
Yeah.
Like they talk about that allergy of the body in like the big book. And like for me, that my body reacts so differently with that particular substance than a normal person.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way. Big part of my story was opiates. I was prescribed, and then I was off and running on those and Adderall and Xanax, but opiates was like the main thing. And it was just, it made me feel, different than the other things did. But obviously the worst thing I could have ever have done at the same time,
Yeah. So, totally. Well, the Xanax, it's so weird. Like people will be like, oh, I took a Xanny bar and went to the bar. It's like, if I take a quarter of a Xanax, I'm out for an entire day.
Really?
Yeah. Like just like, that's how that reacts to my body. I remember like going with my friends. I had gotten in a car accident. I had whiplash. So I had like that neck brace. Everybody was taking ecstasy. And I was like, oh, I don't think it's a good idea for me to take ecstasy with this brain injury. I'll take Xanax.
Great idea.
So like, I remember taking Xanax. It was 4th of July. And we remembered like the fireworks going away. And then that's all I remember. I woke up like an hour away at my friend's house and my face was sticky. And I'm like, oh God. I'm like, you guys,
you were just out.
What the hell happened? And they were like, oh yeah, we took you to a party.
Oh my God.
You had a blow pop in your mouth. You were drooling on yourself. And then we took you to a bar, but we left you in the car. Like that's just how Xanax was for me. So I was like, I definitely don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But the opiates, like when I took them, I could be a mom. Like I wasn't in pain in the beginning. I wasn't in pain and I could get everything done. And like my depression seemed to subside. So it was like the answer to everything. I never wanted to not feel like that.
Yeah. I was the same way. Cause I mean, I only have one child, but with my son, I was using opiates for the first 8 years of his life. And, I wasn't the typical, like when people think drug addict, you're out just running under a bridge somewhere. Like I was, PTA mom and able to do everything all day and run him around. What do you want to do now, son?
Yes,
from like morning to night, this like perfect mom. But really I wasn't, because I was dead on the inside and I couldn't maintain that long term, it caught up to me. So you had how many kids at this
3
point? You had 3 kids.
Yeah, 3 kids. We had a live-in nanny. We had a house. We had like all these things. And it was just always, for me, it was like, oh, if I go on vacation, I'll be so happy. And then I go on vacation and I come home and then I'm like so sad.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, if we move here and get this house, like that'll be it, And it was like, the more I was trying to fill that emptiness from the outside, the worse it became, like the worse inside I became, because it was like, now what? Now what's going to make me happy? I remember going to church, like I'm on the pills. I'm going to church with my 3 kids by myself, like crying, just wanting so bad to feel like connected. Like, so I saw some people feeling like God within them. And like I quickly went to like 40 pain pills a day, like 40 of the Norcos a day. And now I couldn't keep up with that prescription, even though I had like 8 different doctors, like a bazillion pharmacies. I'd go to like San Diego, Fallbrook, Huntington, like everywhere and my kids in tow, you know?
Yeah.
And I went to the doctor. I almost said dealer, but it's the same thing.
Same
really.
thing, yeah.
I went to it really ended up being like that. I went to the doctor and said, I can't do this anymore. Like, obviously this isn't working. My pain now, my whole body hurt. You know, because I metabolized it so quick that I couldn't keep up with it. And now I'm like buying them on the street, and it's just like, I didn't want that.
Our stories are so similar. I was doing the Norcos too, and I was up to 50.
Yeah.
And exactly, like I'm shopping, taking my son with me, you know, driving around doing this. Nobody knew.
Yeah.
Right. Which is, did your husband know really?
No.
So yeah. And then, it got to the point where it's like, okay, now I'm going to have to start buying these on the street. Yeah.
And that's when it starts getting shady. You start meeting shady people. So when I went to the doctor, he said, here, I have this medication for you. It's not addicting. Like, it'll work perfect. And it was Suboxone.
Yeah.
So it worked, you know, and I wasn't building this tolerance to where I had to take so many. A little throughout that, I would like wean down, and my friend was on pills too and would bring like Opanas over, and like that was the shit. I loved them. But basically I just tried to maintain like that. And then I tried to come off of them. And that was the first time I overdosed.
Okay.
Halfway through, 2 weeks into it, because it took 35 days for my body to get that out. I took an Opana and a Xanax.
Can you tell people what an Opana is? Because some people are probably like, what is that?
Oh yeah, I think they took them off the market. They're like for like if you're on your deathbed. I remember my dealer was like, nobody even wants these, and I'm like, perfect, I'll buy the whole bottle.
Yeah, you're like, just do it.
I want them all.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just do it. Oh, it's too strong for everybody, not me.
Yeah.
You know, like for a tiny woman, I really did like
crazy amounts,
way more than most people I was around.
Yeah.
You know, I have like made shots for people once I got into heroin and watched them like overdose and be like, oh fuck, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I guess they're not on that level.
Yeah.
Like,
not on your level.
Yeah, no.
So it's a pain pill. It's like the highest
the highest
level.
It's like morphine and oxy in a pill.
Yep.
And they were really strong. And that's when I got into heroin, when they took them off the market. Because I couldn't find them anymore.
Yeah, but you overdosed.
So I overdosed. I took that and the Xanax, and I just had called. Now my husband knew the pill thing going on, but not the extent of it, and he was just over it. Like, he just wants his wife. Like, get your shit together. Doesn't know anything about addiction. Called my mom and said, I need you to come out to California and help me with the kids. Corey's done with me, and I need to get off these pills. And so, like, I was in so much pain. I had been up for 2 weeks, like, literally just flopping like a fish, like going in my hot tub, jumping in the swimming pool, laying on the concrete. It was like February, weighing like a whole whopping like 92 pounds, I think, when I checked into rehab. And I was taking Adderall too. I was a whole ass mess by this point. Like, the Adderall made me do everything. I felt like super mom. I'd like drive through Mission Viejo clubbing in my car by myself at like 3 a.m. Like just weird shit.
Yeah.
Like,
not good.
Not realizing like my condition. So anyway, my mom came in that morning. My friend dropped those off so I could sleep that night. And then my mom, thank God, saw me, because my best friend would have just put me in bed, so my husband wouldn't have been mad. And my mom saw me and was like, and took me to the hospital. So I woke up in the hospital.
Oh, wow.
And they said, my mom was like, do you want help? Because I had told her, you know what I mean? I told my dad, you know, like my family knew, but my ex-husband, he didn't want to know, you know?
He was,
like, he just wanted me to stop and go back to his drinking buddy.
Yeah,
like, we're having fun. Yep. Everybody came to our house, like and then like from the outside, people will be like, oh my God, like they have the best life. And like, meanwhile on the inside, I'm dying, and I'm like so not happy. So I end up going to my first treatment. which I think they lied on the brochure. I don't know. It ended up being like ABC. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's like out in the desert.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of it. It's
nuts.
so crazy how similar our because Pesh had told me, like, he's like, you guys need to talk because your stories are so like so much of that you're saying is so similar, because I had the same experience when I went to treatment. I thought I was going, and I'd never been to treatment before, and I thought I was going to like this house on the beach.
Yeah.
And I ended up at Yellowstone, but you know Yellowstone?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, right? Like, it's definitely not that.
Yeah.
It's what I needed because it humbled me, but it's not what I thought it was going to be. But crazy, very similar. So carry on.
So I go out there and I had like never seen a tweaker yet, and like all these things. And I remember you got to pick in the morning if you wanted to go to NA or AA. And I'm like, I love drugs more than alcohol. I'll go to the NA meeting. Well, that's where I saw the tweakers.
Yeah.
And I was like, they're making me like super fucking nervous.
Yeah.
Sorry to say a bad word.
No, you can say a bad word all you want. It's all
They
good.
make me like super nervous, right?
Yeah.
And like, because I'm such an empath, like to the max, like, so all the energy in the room, and I'm just like sitting there at like 8 a.m. I'm like, shit, I'm never coming back to the NA. But I remember a lady like, I'll go to AA tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then this lady was sharing how she was like so whacked out. She just shot up in the parking lot and gave the rights away to her kid forever and just couldn't stop getting loaded. And I remember in my heart thinking, oh my God, that poor lady. But my kids are my everything. Like, I would bet anything in that moment that I would never be in a position like that. And I remember thinking that, like, that must be really horrible to be so hooked on a drug that you would give your kid up for it. In that moment, I didn't know I was an addict yet. I thought I was out there just to get off these pills and come back.
But not like them.
Yeah, not like them.
Yeah.
Not like them. Although ironically, like, you know how in the big book, I'm so bad at like memorizing lines, the things I could read it a million times, but like in Bill's story in the beginning where he like sees that like message, that he should, like, I did hear this girl talk about her soft bottom, that she didn't listen. She thought she wasn't like anybody, and she didn't lose anything, and I hadn't lost anything yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I had people like driving out there to deliver me Starbucks because they wouldn't bring me Starbucks at this rehab, and like like I went to the grocery store and they didn't even have my razors. Can you believe this place? Damn it.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I was.
Yeah.
Like telling the cooks, like, do you think you can make salads with cranberries in them? Like, this chick.
Just totally in denial.
Yeah. So I was like, I'll never go on Suboxone. Everybody out there would be like, you need to say yeah. And I'm like, you don't know me. Like, I'm afraid of needles. Like, I know I would never shoot heroin. Like, I'm deathly afraid of needles. And I came home from that treatment, and I was shooting dope in like 3 months from them. And I remember the first time I did it, I called my dad and I was like, I just shot heroin and I'm in a lot of trouble.
Wow.
And he moved out to California. Like, he changed his whole life up to like come get me sober. And my poor ex-husband all of a sudden now has this wife who's like stealing her car, like taking their money, like wants nothing to do with my kids. They would like cry for me. Like, they literally went from having me present, tickling their backs, telling them how perfect God made them at nighttime, to like crying at the front door, like, mommy, please don't leave. And like, I would just run faster because I was in so much pain. I couldn't. And like, that brought more pain on, and I just wanted to numb it out. And I had this Tahoe that had like these limo tent in it and TVs everywhere. And I would just sit in the back and shoot up. And my ex-husband made me like this DVD that had pictures from like when we first met all the way to like the kids being born, with like all this Jason Mraz music on it. And I would just like sit there doing heroin, crying, like wondering what was wrong with me.
Wow.
Like, why would I pick this?
Yeah.
Why would I pick this over these kids? Like, who does that? For a very long time I was stuck on, how did my life get here?
Yeah.
And then my last treatment, my therapist was like, you need to stop. You're here. You need to think of how you're going to get out of here. Not how did you get here? Like, you're here. But if you stay focused on what happened, how did I get here, you're going to die.
Yeah.
And so that just like kind of began it. I started running the streets with my youngest son's dad. And then it was crazy. He went to jail like he went to jail and I was just running amok. Like I didn't know anything about finding heroin really that much, but I'm pretty resourceful. And I was drive on Harbor Boulevard. This is like before we got into dealing and stuff. And I remember one time pulling up to this guy and being like, do you have heroin? And he was like, what? You're a cop. Because my truck did look like a cop car.
Right.
And I was like, no. And I showed him like my needle and my spoon. And he's like, anybody could have that. And I remember I pulled my arm up and I showed him my track marks. And I'm like, I'll buy you whatever your thing is if you help me find heroin. And he was like, oh, perfect. I just got out of prison for 16 years.
Jesus.
I can take you to this place, but you need to get in the very back because if they find out that you're there, it's like the cartel, they'll kill you.
Oh my God.
And I'm thinking like this, let's stop the small talk. All right, let's just get the heroin.
Let's just do it.
Yeah, exactly. So I climb into the back of my car.
Wow.
Give this guy my car keys. I have no idea. I'm sure something pretty big, like 16 years isn't just small time. But I didn't want to talk about that. That was like not even on my mind, not even on my radar that I could just be handing over my car keys to like some serial killer and like never to be seen again. And I like ducked down and
oh my God.
we went down this thing and got this dope and it was the best. And I was like, thank God.
Yeah.
Yeah, God had a hand on me a lot in my addiction even. So but like when I say things like that now as like a woman in recovery and a mom again, I think to myself like, wow, just wow. Like, cause you hear stories of people like really traumatic things happening when they were out there. And like, I've put myself in all those situations. Like I was kidnapped once and brought to like LA to this gun shootout. And like, I wasn't even upset because when he returned me, he gave me extra dope and like just weird things, you know, like just like mind blowing,
right?
Of like who that person is.
Exactly. Like when we're on the other side of it, looking back, it's like, wow, it just really does show you that when you're under the influence, you know, you become somebody completely different. And I always say, you know, as hard as it is to say this, it's like our kids won't keep us sober because people think, you know, my child. And it's like, no, like you have to figure out what's going on in your life and those unresolved issues and the trauma and why we feel how we feel inside and why we're so restless, irritable and discontent and like work on those things first, you know?
Totally.
Yeah. How old were your kids at this time? Like, were you seeing them at all? Like what was going on with them and your ex?
I would see that I was still had them every other week. Like he was so broken about our marriage that he couldn't think clearly to protect them yet from me.
So you were living where at this time?
I lived at my dad's. So I moved in with my dad. My husband was just kind of on his own and my kid, like it was like I wasn't so bad, which I was still bad. Like it wasn't good. It wasn't a safe situation for kids.
Yeah.
But I hadn't really gone off the rails. So I went to so I ended up, his dad was locked up. I ended up going to the hospital. I had pneumonia and then I couldn't stop throwing up. And they're like, oh, you have acid reflux. And then I went in another time and they were like, you need a blood transfusion, but we're going to do an ultrasound first. And I was like, okay. I was so sprung out. I was with my buddy who came around with me. He wasn't on drugs, but thank God he was with me because he saved me a couple of times when I overdosed. And I went into the hospital. I went to the ultrasound and I saw a baby. I was like, what the fuck is that? And she's like, oh, that your baby. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not pregnant. I was like 5.5 months pregnant.
Oh,
and I had no idea. And the crazy thing is my son, Jax, that's my youngest, he in the ultrasound was like, she's like, I've never seen this in an ultrasound. His hands looked like they were praying up. And I didn't stay for the blood transfusion that day. I was like wigging out. Like, what am I going to do? And I couldn't stop getting loaded like when I was pregnant, you know? And I remember going to like cop dope and having this big bag, like, and whole, cause I was just like tiny, like even my stomach was tiny, and have baggy shirt and then hold my bag over because, you know, I didn't want anybody to know that. And then I ended up with MRSA while I was pregnant with him in my blood. And I didn't want to go to the hospital because I didn't want them to find out I was getting loaded and take this child from me. But I had 105.7 fever when I got there.
Holy smokes.
And they were like, if you waited 6 more hours, you would have died. And it was like the sickest I've ever been. And I stayed in the hospital for 30 days and got off of everything. They wanted me to stay on Suboxone, but I was like, no, I just needed separation from it to be clear enough to like have the baby. Then I had him, and
and he was okay.
Yeah, totally fine.
Wow.
He's so fine. He's so fine. He was itty bitty, 5 weeks early, but my 3 younger ones were all early, and he breathed on his own. He was fine. Brought him home. He is something else. So I started using again, and CPS stepped in when he was about 6 months old. And that's when they interviewed my ex-husband too, to make sure my other kids were safe. And that's when he was like, we're done.
How did they get involved? CPS? Did someone call?
Yeah. The girl who was like doing heroin with me, it was like, I was waiting to go into a treatment with them. Like it was like some house around here they used to have, I think it closed down, that you could bring your kid with you. And so my mom helped me find it. I wasn't like homeless or in a dangerous situation, so I wasn't like top on the list, but I was already waiting to go in there when CPS came. And so I had asked them, I didn't know anything about CPS. I just really wanted to get sober for my kids. So I said, yeah, I relapsed. I told them only Percocet, but can you please help me get into this program? Can you call them? Because I need to get into this program with my child. And they were like, yeah. And they never called, you know. And then they just wanted me to drug test. And I was like, if I could be clean, I wouldn't be going to a 18-month-old program with my kid. And so like when they came to interview me, I signed this paperwork saying that I wouldn't leave the county without permission from the social worker. And I was in so much fear. Like it was like crunch time. Like I started calling them August. CPS got involved in September, and they took them from me in October. And I went to Carlsbad to see my friend, and the social worker called me, and I said, oh, I'm in Carlsbad. And she said, okay, I need to meet you right now. And so when I was in Carlsbad to go meet the social worker, the program called me, and they're like, your bed's available. And I was like, thank God, it's getting so close. And when I got there, she was like, you left the county without your kid. We need him, or I'm going to call the police. And I was like, wait, I need to take him to this program. Like we finally got in, and they were like, no, you can't have him. And I went off the rails.
Wow.
I wanted to die.
What did you do?
I gave them to him. I had to.
Yeah.
And then he went with his grandma.
And how old was he at this time?
6 months.
6 months.
I know. He cried for 2 weeks straight. Like it was the worst. I don't even know. I went off the rails. I wanted to die. Like I thought, what kind of mom gets her kid taken? Now I've become the mom that I thought that I saw.
Going back, yeah.
The difference between her and I was that I had family that took him. You know what I mean? She probably just didn't, but there was no difference. I couldn't stop.
Yeah. And your older kids at this point, they're
with their dad.
With their dad, yeah.
But I saw them, you know, like he was good like that. Like he hated me. He still hasn't even let me do an amends just yet. But I caused a lot of pain to him. You know, he never expected to end up with a wife that walked out and did heroin. And so then I started just like, I remember, I don't know, I was like running heroin from like down by the border, and like all of a sudden I really went off the rails. Like I didn't want to live. You know, it was the most devastating, heart-wrenching, like pain in my heart, like physical, to be separated. And I thought he would be what got me into that rehab. Like if I could go away from my other kids for 18 months, as long as I had a child to focus on, and I knew they were okay. So that just opened up that whole thing. And like, you know, the next 5 years, 6 years, or actually no, I got sober when he was just under 4. And I just went in and out of treatment. Like I had insurance. I just was going to like good, bad. I've been in like all of them, you know, like Gibson House and San Bernardino, like, and then I'd be like, oh, this isn't for me. Or I would take drugs in with me, and as soon as they ran out, I'd run out. Or like it was like that obsession of the mind for me was just like, I hear people go like, oh, I held on for 8 months. And I'm like, I can't do 8 minutes in that
obsessively thinking about it all the time.
Well, like I'm just high. Yeah. Like I'm just high 24/7. Like I'm not even fun to be around, because like my high is like as close to death as possible. Like I just want to be so numbed out that like I overdosed all the time.
Did you feel like you were suicidal? I mean, or
I just felt like I didn't want to feel like, I don't think I was suicidal because I could have easily like done that. You know what I mean? I knew I had to hold on for my kids. They were like what kept me going. And my oldest son had remembered me before I became an addict.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, they obviously knew what was going on.
Yeah. Like he knew, especially, like girls didn't really know, but he knew because I was like, he remembers me normal-ish, you know, like taking him to the skate parks and PTA stuff and, you know, just being super involved. And they just couldn't really remember because they were like 5, you know, when I bailed out. And so he would call me when I was like wanting to die. And he would be like, Mom, don't let them make you think you're a bad mom. You're not a bad mom.
Oh,
like,
wow.
don't forget. You're not a bad
bless his
mom. I
heart.
remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's awesome. We have my sobriety date tattooed. He was his tattoo on his leg, and his football coach at Mission was like, oh, what's your new tattoo? And he's like, oh, it's my mom's sobriety date. And they were like, oh, she doesn't drink anymore. And he was like, no, she doesn't shoot dope anymore. And they were like, oh. But like, I've just taught them to be
That's so amazing.
in truth
Yeah.
and not be ashamed.
Yeah.
And I've gone and spoke at the, I don't know if you know Danny Murphy. Do you know?
Sounds familiar.
Stop Before You Start, that would go into the high schools.
No, but sounds familiar.
So I would go in there, and like my pitch to them was like, there's so many kids sitting out there whose parents they go home to active alcoholic and addict parents and come to school with shame, thinking they're the only ones.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're not, you know. I've like spoke before, and then kids will come up and be like, my mom overdosed on heroin and died. You know, my mom has 1 year sober. And then all these kids see each other coming up to me crying, and they feel like, oh wait, I'm not the only one.
What do you say to those kids out there that are suffering in silence? They don't know what to say, who to go to, what to do.
Yeah. I mean, like, you find somebody you trust. There's somebody out there that you can trust to talk to about this. This is like, I mean, unfortunately, we're in a world where it's like riddled with this right now.
Yeah.
Like, housewives on pain pills, you know, Xanax. Oh, I need this for this and this for this. And it's just like, boop, boop, boop. It's like, oh, no problem. And like, to them, it's not a problem until it like becomes a problem.
Yeah. Everything seems to be an escape from feeling, whether it's like through social media. I mean, my son's 15. It's like everything's on social media and everything's about like distraction, you know, and not like sitting in your emotions and feeling things and, you know.
Yeah. No, totally. So, I don't know. I just went to so many treatments, and I always like start out this. There was like this guy, Jay, who had said this in one of my treatments, and he was like, everybody look around the room. What's going to be red? And I want you to focus on it. I'm going to have you close your eyes, and whoever can remember the most amount of red is going to win. And I was like, 30 girls, you know, I'm like, I'm going to win. I'm going to get that detailed one, you know? And I was like, red, red, red. And when we closed our eyes, he was like, what was blue? And I was like, damn it. I was looking for what was red. And he's like, you're going to get what you're looking for. If you want an excuse to walk out this door and continue the life path you're on, it's right there. But if you want to look for like the people, places, and things that God's going to put in your path to pull you out of this hell, it's there too.
Yeah.
So I had watched one of my friends overdose and die when we decided to relapse when I was up in LA. And that was like really hard. I didn't get sober for another 1.5 years after that, but I had seen like everything. I'd run out of everything. I had abscesses on my legs. I would like choke myself in the mirror and shoot up in my temple. Like I was
Holy
a mess,
smokes.
like a total mess. And like I couldn't get high enough, like ever. And you know, like I could never find veins. So like I would always do too much because I didn't want to waste it when I fucking finally found one. So it was just like
the madness.
It was.
Yeah.
It was, like it was never getting dope. Like I always had that. It was like trying to get it in my body. That was like the part. And like I was so sick. I knew like I needed one more treatment, and I had like got into this treatment with a car, money, and dope because I always brought it in by this point, you know, because I wasn't sure. about getting sober just yet. Like I would get loaded in the middle of AA meetings, just like about to catch sobriety, like let me go get loaded.
Yeah.
And there's like a buddy that goes to the Saddleback Club and he's like, yeah, Dana's a miracle. Like I'd be like drooling on myself, like nodded out, and he would kick my chair and I would just like jolt awake and start clapping, like nobody's sharing, nothing's going on, like just a mess.
Yeah.
So I walked into this last place and I remember thinking to God, like, if I don't get sober, kill me. Let me be the one that dies this time because I'm done. Like it didn't work anymore. I had charges. I had racked up, you know, like all sorts of things. My next stop was prison, you know, type thing. I got sober. I think I had 11 charges open, like probation violations. Like that was just a mess. And I walked into this treatment and I remember saying, God, like if I don't make it, let me die. Like please kill me. Like I don't want to live like this anymore. And like that was a really weird place to be because I didn't want to be sober and I didn't want to be loaded and I didn't want to live and I didn't want to die. And so you're just stuck with yourself.
Yeah.
And that's like what I was running from my whole life. So it was like super scary and very lonely. And
did you feel like you surrendered at that point?
no, because I was getting high in there.
Okay.
So there is a moment of surrender though.
Okay.
Like I was getting high the whole time and the nurse came up to me and said, and I was in there with my son's dad and his uncle and some other clients. And they said to me, she goes, I found this spoon in your fireplace. Is this your spoon in my room? And I was like, I don't know. This doesn't really look familiar. And she was like, you're the first client to go through that room. And I was just like, that was the moment I surrendered. I remember thinking like, I need to stay in this place. If I walk out that door, I am going to die. And I told her, if I tell you it is mine, please don't kick me out. Like I'll die. And they let me stay, you know? And that was when I surrendered. And I remember like, it was so then that Friday, everybody at my treatment left to go get loaded, including my son's dad, his uncle, like all the clients, like everybody left. And I just remember, I don't know why I didn't. That was my move. Like I always left.
Yeah.
But I just stayed and I had this great sponsor and I heard her story and it's like, I was looking for God now, right? I kept that with me. And so now I'm looking for the signs. And I heard her speak and I heard her talk about where she copped dope in New York City and she was a fashion model. And I was like, yes. I want her.
Yeah.
You know, because God let me hear that because I would want her. But really what she had to offer was so much spirituality and love. And she showed up at my treatment and we got right into step work. And, you know, I just started becoming willing. And I prayed for willingness because I'm not that guy that came in was like, I am willing to do anything you tell me to do. Like, I'm not really that willing. Like I still kind of want things my way.
Yeah.
And, so it was like that. And then I would go into my therapist there, who was amazing, who would tell me all the time, like, you're so smart. And I just felt so worthless, you know, like I felt so unlovable. I had like destroyed my body. I had like popped my implant shooting up right here. Like I was just really, really a mess. And I was like, who would ever love me? You know what I mean? Look at what you've done to yourself. Like you threw away this great life. Like you're so unlovable.
Yeah.
And I just remember just praying for willingness. And I started to become a little bit willing. You know, I did the work and I remember that therapist, she was a piece of work. She was so good. She's like, you're so smart, Dana, and this, that, and the other thing. And she's like, you know what you need? And I was like, thinking she was going to give me the answer to sobriety. I was so excited. I was like, what? And she's like, you need a job. I was like, I am a job. Like I am a full-time job trying to keep me sober. You have no idea. And like, it was true. Like that was a full-time job in the beginning. I went to meetings like 4 times a day sometimes because I didn't know what to do at my time.
Yeah.
Like I just spent the last, you know, just in that hustle and that like, you know, drug, hotel, shoot up, and whatever. That it's like 1 hour is not enough for me. It wasn't enough. So I got into my step work and just got into that. And then I got tricked when I had probably only 3 weeks to go into a panel because somebody picked me up at my treatment. And I went to Laguna Treatment Hospital. It was like a lot of people there. and I shared my story only 10 minutes. And like, I knew how to stay sober because I didn't leave treatment. So I knew there was something I knew how to do. And I just kept it really brief. And I didn't say my sobriety date. They were like, just don't say you have 3 weeks sober. I was like, now you're asking me to lie. But I just like evaded the question. And that was the first moment I knew that like my story can help other people, and all that pain that I had to walk through will become a strength someday.
Absolutely.
And that's when my life changed.
Yes.
That's when I felt so much hope
for
everything. And that's just how it's been. I've never, ever had anything handed to me in sobriety. I mean, my dad paid my sober living for the first year, but I was working like a minimum wage job, paying everything when I had my kids on the weekends, to like just go eat or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't take, I was court ordered to sober living. They dropped all my charges. Like that was a miracle in itself. And I just was really, this is the first time, like I just knew my life depended on it. I knew my life depended on doing this program, and my kids, I saw them, but I knew that wasn't my priority right now because I would continue to go back. And this time it was like, I used to forget what it looked like when I walked in, like I would, glamorize like how much I loved heroin, how much I loved it. And I hate this place. But this time, like God let me see what my last day looked like, like that moment. And I never forgot. That's what it really looks like.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like this,
Yeah. How did it feel when you could finally look at yourself and like the person love the person looking back at you? What was that moment like?
It felt so good.
Yeah.
It felt so good. It came with my kids, because I was still in the part where like I was so afraid they were going to be so ashamed. I didn't want to wear like shorts because my legs were so scarred. I didn't, like I felt like they were going to be like, oh my God, our mom. And I remember driving home. I was roughly around like 90 days sober, and I could pick up my son because he was always at his friend's house. He was a freshman when I got sober. And I was driving him back to his dad's, and I was like, the only thing I regret from using is hurting you guys. And he was like, Mom, no. He's like, we wouldn't be who we are today if we didn't have what we went through. Like it made us so strong.
My goodness.
It made us so strong.
Yeah.
Like what if we never saw adversity and you continued to pretend like you had this perfect life with dad, and then it hit us and we were the one who did that.
Yeah.
We were the one who went down that path. And then I remember like he really wanted me to wear shorts in the summer. And so he would come down to my work with his little girlfriend and get pedicures sometimes on my lunch break where I worked at this insurance company in San Juan. And he had like painted his toes red and gold the one time. And then his buddy told me like they were at the beach, and his buddy was like, what, are you gay? And he was like, shut the fuck up. He's like, I did it because I want my mom to not feel like it matters what people think about her legs. And so I put it on my toes. And like, he's always been like that. He's
that
like,
is so sweet.
Yeah, he's pretty cool.
Supportive.
I know. So now, like when I speak at meetings, like my daughters, like they'll get all dressed up. They'll be like, that's our mom.
They're proud of you.
Yeah. And like I did that CPS thing. And the day I was supposed to get him back, the social workers told, like, they were all like, oh, you're going to get him back. Everything's going to be fine. They came and checked my house. I was renting a room by that point. And then, like I went in thinking I was going to get him back, and they were like, no, never mind. Like, we need to check your boyfriend's background because we think he's a drug dealer. And he really wasn't. Like, I had met him through like Stop Before You Start. So then I went on like a year and a half of getting until I got him back. And I had to wear this drug patch, and I would go in and they were like, you're never getting him back. And I would leave court and be like, I can't do this. And I would like fall apart and then just pray like, God, fill me with your strength. Like, I need to get through this sober. And he would put another girl in my path who needed me. Do you know what I mean? So now I attract the ones with the babies, with the cases, with everything. And it's like never looks like mine did. So it's like so easy for me to say, this is going to be okay. You're going to get through it.
Yeah.
And that's just like how I like, sometimes I fight it. Like, I remember my last drug patch, I was getting it taken off, and I was working down in San Juan, and I had like a good job. and I had to be in this business meeting. And I remember all of a sudden they call me and they're like, you need to come in today, not tomorrow, to change your patch. And then you have like an hour. And I was like, I'm like, who the fuck do these people think they are? They think I'm like nothing. Like I'm in the middle of a business meeting. The whole way up, I was so pissed off. I was like so mad. And then when I got there, I saw this little newborn and I was like, don't look at the baby. It was like during COVID. I was like, just don't be a weirdo. It's COVID. Don't look at the baby. And like, of course I looked at the baby. And then the mom ended up asking me to be her sponsor that day.
Oh, wow.
And the whole way back to my office, I was like, I'm sorry, God. I will stop fighting you. I know you needed me there today to meet this woman. And she is like successfully sober. She has a fuck fentanyl type TikTok.
Nice.
She lives in Texas. They have their son back. Yeah. So it's like, and God's been like that. Like,
it just goes to show you, if you trust the process and if you help others along the way, and surrender to that, it's all going to work out. I mean, you are a prime example. Like, you've had to overcome so much and you've trusted in God, finally in your life. And then women and things and people get put in your life that show you like, okay, it's going to be okay.
It's totally crazy like that. Like even where I live, like my sponsor moved to Hawaii and, like I was like, can I rent your house? And it was like, I didn't have my oldest son with me. He never lived with me again, and that was like hard for me because I always wanted to be his home, but I just like accepted that I had a 3-bedroom and my girls would come every other week. And so my sponsor was like, I'll rent you my house, and it's a 6-bedroom house. And so I mean, she could be charging way more, right? With the market today, it's like nuts, but she doesn't. And the week I moved in, my son's girlfriend and him broke up and he had nowhere to go. And I was like, come home.
Yeah.
And I laid in bed and was like, thank you, God. Yeah. Like I didn't see this one coming. I really didn't see this one coming, but it like completed everything.
That's so amazing. I went through family court with my son, with my ex-husband for like 2.5, 3 years. And it was like super like dark, at times where I thought I'm never going to get custody of him. He's always going to be with his dad. And, I was in his life every second up until, a certain point. And I just had to keep having faith and being consistent and showing up, you know what I mean? And showing him through my actions, because love is an action. And I thought, okay, maybe it'll get to the point one day where at least he's like accepting me back into his life. And, maybe I'll have him 30% of the time or 20%, or whatever it is. And, our custody agreement's 50-50, but he lives with me 24/7.
Yeah.
Like he visits his dad a little bit here and there, but like he lives with me. Aww. And I never thought it would go back to that as fast as it did. And it's, just having that faith and like what you said, like using everything that happened in my life, all the pain, all the trauma, and turning it into something positive and sharing, my story and continuing this message on for other women and men that are going through it too.
Yeah.
It's like a little bug flying around. Alfred, can you turn the AC on? That it will work out, if we do the right thing. And it might take some time, but to be patient and trust the process.
I know. I think what people don't realize is like they'll see you in a good position, but they don't get a glimpse of what it took you to get there. Do you know what I mean? So when I had my son living with me 50% of the time, he was going back and forth between me and his grandma. CPS came in and took him out of my house. And I had to see him for 6 hours a week monitored for another like 5 months before I got him back. And when I would bring him home to his grandma, he didn't understand it. He was little.
Yeah.
And he would cling to my clothing and I'd have to pry his fingers off. And he'd be like, Mama, don't leave me. My eyes and arms are crying for you. And it would like shatter me to the core. Yeah. And on my oldest son, who's always been like, way ahead of his years, he would always meet me on those visits because I wouldn't be I would need that, I would need that. And he was like, oh, and they're super connected. Like, it's amazing. Like, that was the thing. I always knew I had to get sober so they could know each other because the other families, they wouldn't. And now I had a kind of I guess, tumultuous relationship with his grandma at times because, you know, she had my son. I'm on the street with her son.
Right.
Like, you know, it just, plus I gave you my son and now I want him back. And you've taken care of him and loved him and
that's
bonded with him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I was like, it still was really hard on her, but I was really, like, even though we weren't super in the position we are today, at that time, I was like, listen, it is always about him.
Yeah.
If he has to be with you, like, I'm not going to force him to be here because he needs to feel stable wherever he's at. And it needs to be like organic for him. He didn't ask for this position. And, you know, it's been hard because his dad, I think I was telling you coming in here, is still on fentanyl.
Yeah.
You know, and like that's a hard one because I don't want that around him.
Yeah.
But I don't also, when he asks, I tell his dad, if he asks about you, like, we'll call you.
Yeah.
But you don't get to just insert yourself into his life right now when you want to, because that's not fair.
Yeah.
And my biggest fear, honestly, is just that, like, he'll end up overdosing. And then my son will be like, why didn't you let me talk to him? Why couldn't I see him? Now I will never see him again. So it's like such a weird.
It's such a, it's so emotional, that space. And, you know, what do you do and not do? And I think you're doing the right thing. That's for sure, what you're doing right now. How did you deal with the guilt and shame that surrounds, you know, what mothers, if we're in our addiction, you know, go through with our kids? Because I know that was like my biggest thing for at least, I'd say, the first like 5 years of my recovery. I'm 7 now, but it was the last couple of years that I really feel like I've healed. But I had so much guilt and shame surrounding, you know, things that went on, you know.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of women struggle with that. What do you say to those women?
Like, will still see a picture from when I know that I was getting loaded and they were living like this carefree, like the years you don't get back.
Yeah.
And it'll take my breath away, you know, because I'm just like, it will forever make me sad. You could tell me whatever you think, you know, like, oh, you don't have to, you're not like that today. I get it. I'm not like that today, but I was like that then. And it still reminds me that I missed out.
And it's okay to feel those things then.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to
totally,
be, it's okay. You know?
Yeah. No, and it is okay. And like the guilt and shame, I think I've just, like, God has really restored that. I have, because I talk about it so much. And then once you talk about it and you take the shame out of it and you realize, like, everybody suffers something.
Yes, they
honestly,
do.
in this world. Like, nobody's perfect. Everybody suffers something. So if we, like, talk about our suffering, it takes that, like, shame away.
It totally does.
You know, because the shame comes with not wanting anybody to know what and who you really were.
Right.
And I'm proud of who I am.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, now I'm proud of all that. Like, I really wouldn't change that. Like,
and I love your vulnerability. And that was me for a long time, is that I didn't open up completely. And I feel like once I started sharing authentically and genuinely the whole story, then the shame died, you know, because I feel like so many people don't want to say certain things. And I just love how vulnerable you are. And you talked about all of it. Like, a lot of women don't want to talk about using while they're pregnant and different things they do, but it's the story for so many women.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make you a bad
like
person.
It was like, you know, when people are like, oh, I drew that line in the sand and like, I was never going to cross it. It was like, I crossed all of them, you know, like, it didn't matter what the line was. If it was like between me and that, like, I crossed it. Like, that's how much power that had over me. Now that power's gone, and I'm filled with a power, you know, greater than myself. Like, truthfully, I could feel it fill me, you know, and I'm always put, like, the most perfect people on my path. You know, they might have like 5 days sober and they, like, really latch on, and I need to show them, like, the God within me to, like, ignite the God within them. But like, they're put right in the path when I'm going through something, and I need them just as much.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, just like that. And in the beginning, I think it was, like, really hard for me to differentiate between people that took and people that received, because, like, people that received, like, the thing, like, even if it didn't come back directly at me, it kept it going. And people that take suck the shit out of my energy, and it would be drained, you know, because, like, that's just how it was. And like, it's really crazy if you, like, I pray so much, and my oldest daughter, who's 17, she was like really going through it senior year. Like it didn't look like she was going to graduate. And she was super depressed, had some eating issues, didn't want to leave her bed. Every morning it was like something. And I'm just trying to, like, I'm a single mom. I got 4 kids. Like I have to get to work, but like I can't just dismiss that my kids are falling apart. So she would be like, I can't make it to school today, please. And, you know, like I'd be on the phone with the vice principal. Like, I can't send my daughter like this. Like, I feel like she's just looks like an alcoholic waiting for somebody to offer her a drug give her the solution to her pain.
Yeah.
And I was just praying, and it was like when I got my 5 years, she seems to get worse. Like, my mom helps all these people. Like, why can't she help me? You know? And because everyone's like, oh, you help me so much. You know, when you get like your birthday and like your sponsees will share stuff. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, and I jumped in her bed on a Monday morning, and I was like, babe, the only way I know how to help people that feel exactly like you do, like they feel hopeless, they feel like they don't want to go on, is through steps and like the AA book. Like, will you try it with me, and we'll just replace alcohol with like sadness and depression? And she was like, yeah, I'll do whatever. And like we did it, and I broke down the 3rd step prayer, and I was like, bondage of self, like you're never good enough, like this is it. And like, honestly, we made it through.
Wow.
We graduated, and
That's
she's
very
like
cool.
thriving.
Nice.
You know, she's like works out.
That's amazing.
She's like, you know, normal, you know, pain in the ass teenager. Like my mini me though, like she really is. And so like I was like batting, like how could somebody have helped me at that age? You know, how could somebody have like gotten through to me?
Yeah.
And like it was just, I did love it too. And my other kids are like super into prayer and super into connection and God. And she was my resistant one, but like it worked.
Yeah.
And like I have hope. And
yeah, I'd love for people to hear that, because I think everybody should do the 12 steps.
Yeah.
Whatever age, you know, like there's just so much value in it. And there's so much insight in just having that self-awareness.
Totally.
You know, and yeah, everyone should do the 12 steps. That's for sure. What do you say to women out there, you know, that are struggling, that went through similar situations with their children, and they just feel hopeless right now? What would you say?
You just really have to reach in and build strength. Like, God gave us these children. I have a sponsee right now that CPS is going to give her back her 6-month-old, but they want the cousin who the 6-month-old lives with. There's 2 of them, a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. They live together, and CPS is saying, no, let's adopt out the older one, but we'll give you back your other one. And I'm like, wait a minute.
That doesn't even make sense.
That doesn't make sense. If you're fit for one, you're fit for them both. But they had already said that this one's adopted. And I said, appeal it. And you just lean into God. Like, that's it. Like, that's the only answer, is to lean in, and then like look for the people. There's plenty of women out there who will lend, you know, a hand and be super supportive. And you know, like that's what it's about. It's just linking up with a support system, because we were never meant to raise our kids alone. It takes a village. It really does. One of my sponsees is like at my son's ice cream social right now. And, you know, I can't do it without on my own.
Yeah.
You know, it feels lonely. You know,
we need the support.
Yeah, it does feel lonely sometimes, you know, and you feel like nobody gets it, because it's all on you, because you're the one that wakes up and the first thing you think of is like your kids, you know, like that you're just super hyper focused. And like just, you know, just get connected to the right people. You know, even in AA, like I've had people say like, oh, don't tell that story. Oh, because I shot up and went and spoke on a panel one time, and they were like, don't share that in the meeting. And I called my mom and I was like, oh my God, Mom, I'm so bad that they don't even want me to share my stuff at AA. But the thing is like, and I didn't know, the thing is like, there's people that are judgmental just aren't in their, like aren't spiritually fit really. Right. So there's going to be, nobody could judge me more than I judge myself. You know, you can't hurt my feelings. I said the worst things to myself.
Yeah.
You know, and so like, it's just a story if somebody else does it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm sure there's women out there that are going to watch this that are going to want to get in contact with you.
Yeah.
So are you willing to?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give out your information?
Oh, do I do that right now?
You could do it now. Yep. And
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, you can call me. It's my number is 949-526-6002. it'd probably be best to text it
Yeah.
first. But yeah, I'll definitely get back.
Well, thank you.
Too.
Your story is very inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah. And just what you've overcome, it's truly remarkable.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for doing all you do with the women in the community. Yeah.
I told all my sponsees are going to be out there handing out Narcan next week.
That's rad.
Yeah.
We're doing it, you guys.
Yeah.
We're doing it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Amazing. Keep that on for a second because we're going to do a little behind the